We are taking a closer look this morning at the impact the pandemic is having on special needs students in the U.S. The CDC says in-person learning is possible with the right safety precautions, and many parents are pushing to get their kids back into the classroom. But families of students with disabilities say they are facing a unique uphill battle, and their kids are being left behind.
When her St. Louis suburb first closed schools, Ashley Young saw it as an opportunity.
You know, you have these kind of grandiose ideas of this homeschool scenario that you're going to do.
But Ashley soon noticed her 6-year-old son, Miles, was slipping.
Can you say hi really quick? Hi. The kids with Down syndrome, they say if you don't use it, you lose it. We're like, great, okay, he knows all his colors. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, he doesn't remember his colors anymore.
She says outside the classroom, Miles doesn't get the repetition he needs. Some lessons from his Individualized Education Program, or IEP, he can't receive at all. Even classes that otherwise work well on Zoom don't work well for Miles.
It was just too much to hear multiple people talking at a time, or sometimes just the way that the volume comes across on a Zoom.
During a recent Zoom class, things start out fine. Then Miles has trouble with the iPad. When Ashley comes to help, he's not happy.
Get out.
But once Ashley leaves, Miles makes a break for it.
Not Zoom. Stop. No.
And as soon as Ashley turns her back again, Miles is out. This is 6 minutes into class.
Were there moments that stuck out to you where you thought this just isn't working?
A kind of a turning point for me was I didn't necessarily like the mom that I was becoming, and it was just really overwhelming for both of us.
So Ashley resorted to hiring a private specialist to work with Miles in person, part-time.
I don't feel like he was getting, I don't want to say any education, but it's true. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't feel like he learns anything from Zooms online.
It's a sentiment we're hearing from special needs families all across the country, like the Azeltine family of Charlotte, North Carolina. 6-year-old Connor is partially deaf and too young to read closed captions on Zoom.
He relies pretty much on myself or my husband sitting with him. Both my husband and I work. And no one's coming to us and saying, hey, we're going to pay your bills.
Courtney says to learn through a screen, Connor must first learn to read, a catch-22 since he's learning that virtually.
See the other kids his age reading paragraphs, reading sentences, or they can at least sound out words. And he can't do any of that. And it's heartbreaking.
She says the hardest part is that Connor is now old enough to realize he's falling behind.
The teacher put the answers up on the screen for them to all check themselves, and he didn't get a single one right. And he looked at me and put his head on my shoulder and started to cry.
Over in Pueblo, West Colorado, Kevin Blunt says his son Makai is supposed to receive regular speech therapy to help with his nonverbal autism. But since it can't be done via Zoom, Makai hasn't had speech therapy in almost a year.
We've even asked, are we able to sign a waiver and get specialists like speech therapy to come to the house? No, we can't do any of that at this time.
The family says the school also refused to loan them the sensory items normally used to help Makai learn.
Basically, putting Makai in front of a screen, it's useless. It really is.
You know, we've heard for years, no child left behind, no child left behind. But we really feel like the kids with an IEP or special needs are specifically being left behind.
Jennifer Manning, director of special education for the neighborhood charter schools in New York City, says parents are facing an impossible task.
We always say that just because you have a student with special needs as your child does not make you an expert on how to teach a kid with special needs.
At the end of the month, she hopes to welcome her special needs students back to the classroom, where they can attend virtual classes with the added help of in-person professionals. But she says that's not as easy as it sounds.
We have a building in which because of code, we can't open our windows. And so all of these precautions that are told to be put in place in order to make a building more safe are really, really complicated.
In the meantime, she says her school is working to make online learning as fruitful as possible.
If I'm a visual learner, I'm always going to have that visual piece to go back to. If I'm an audio learner, I'm always going to have something to click on so something can be read aloud to me. So we've sent home weighted vests, and we've sent home special seats and special sensory tools that we would have in the building so that kids and families have access to those tools at home. We know that this is not our ideal situation, but what can we do to make it better?
It's the kind of support the Blunts and the Azle teens say they're not receiving from their respective schools, but they intend to keep fighting.
I'll scream and I'll fight and I'll yell and I'll do whatever I have to do for someone to listen, because it's critical. It truly is critical.
Now, since we did those interviews, Mekhi Blunt is back in school for now. His school says they will monitor COVID-19 cases day by day. As for virtual learning for special needs students, the school says, quote, specialists and therapists continued to meet with those students and their parents virtually and provided as close to the same services possible as required on the student IEP plans. Now, an administrator for Connor Azle School tells us we have followed appropriate procedures and made solid educational decisions in the midst of the most disruptive event I have experienced as an educator. We have worked and will continue to work in good faith with the Azle teens to make appropriate educational decisions for Connor. And as for Miles Young, Ashley says he has been welcome back in school for a while now, but because he has a heart condition, his doctors have deemed him too high risk. So both he and his sister Lucia will have to stay home for the foreseeable future.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.